Disclaimer: this video has references to homophobic and transphobic insults. If you are offended by these or are not in the best state of mind right now, I'd recommend either saving this video for another time or skipping it altogether. Welcome back to Debunking, everyone. This is a video that I've been thinking of making for quite some time. If right now you're confused about LGBTQ+ identities or against them for any reason, I'd highly recommend watching this video. It may change your mind. If you wish to skip the intro, feel free to use the time codes referenced in the description. As stated in the title, this video aims to debunk misconceptions about LGBTQ+ identities and explain them to people who may not be familiar with them. Overall, I hope that this video can inform people everywhere that may otherwise not be in the know. Of course, if I am wrong with any of this information, please correct me in the comments. Any labels I may use before explaining them or as part of examples are not meant in any way to offend anyone. This video will also talk about examples and arguments that relate most to the United States. They could potentially apply anywhere though. Let's begin this video by saying that gender and sexuality aren't choices that people make on a whim. They're predestined from birth, hence why we use terms such as sexual orientation instead of sexual preference, as the latter implies that it's a choice. This misconception is perhaps one of the most common roots of confusion about LGBTQ+ people, and is why LGBTQ+ education with kids' gay misinformation is misleading. People are already gay, trans, etc., and that can't be changed. More people come out as LGBTQ+ when taught about it than when not taught about it, because they're encouraged to learn more about themselves and find out who they are and love. There isn't any good evidence at all that states that LGBTQ+ education makes people gay, bi, trans, etc., if they wouldn't be otherwise. Another one of the most common arguments used against LGBTQ+ people is that it's sinful to be gay, trans, etc. If referring to Christianity, which I believe would be the most common religion against my religious viewers, then there is the infamous quote of Leviticus 18:22 and similar quotes. Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman, that is detestable. This quote is commonly believed to be a mistranslation, with it thought to be a condemnation of pedophilia or adultery rather than homosexuality. In fact, the word homosexuality didn't appear in the English Bible until 1946. Along with this, there is nothing in the Bible that condemns trans people. I would also like to point to Galatians 3:28, which says that there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ, as well as the core teachings of love your neighbor, etc. And no, being LGBTQ+ is not unnatural. Quite the opposite, actually. People don't learn to hate LGBTQ+ people naturally. Generations teach this hate down. Love, however, is natural, no matter what form it may take, including self-love. There is evidence of many species besides humans that engage in homosexual behavior, for lack of a better term, including penguins, ducks, bats, dolphins, elephants, and a ton more. Many species have gay members, but only humanity engages in homophobia. And yes, people are born into the wrong body and often feel miserable due to it, which is a condition known as gender dysphoria. The proposed fixes to gender dysphoria that don't involve transitioning are pretty much akin to conversion therapy, which doesn't really work at all. All it does is make LGBTQ+ people feel even worse about themselves because of a condition that they can't change. Allowing a trans person to transition to the correct gender is the only way to relieve gender dysphoria. As for the bathroom dialogue, trans people should be allowed to use the bathroom to align with the gender that they identify with. One of the most common arguments against this is pedophilia accusations. As far as I know, there hasn't been a single case of what many transphobes say is identifying as a woman to stalk cis women in the restrooms, and even if there are any cases, it is not in any way representative of all trans people. Trans people don't just announce that they have a specific private part to everyone or use the excuse to stalk people. Not only do most of them not being the creeps that the transphobes make them out to be, but also because of gender dysphoria. It's merely another backwards transphobic argument that holds no real water. This argument has been used against gay and bisexual people, and, once again, with no real evidence. Ultimately, if it were up to me, bathrooms would be gender neutral everywhere to include non-binary people and get over this debate in the first place. But that is still, unfortunately, a rather far-away goal in some parts of the United States. Now that we have some common arguments debunked, I should also take the time to explain what the identities within the LGBTQ+ acronym mean. First off, an L and G, which stands for lesbian and gay. These labels relate to homosexuality or attaching to the same gender and sex, most commonly in females and males respectively. However, they aren't limited to those gender identities, as some non-binary people use them as well. The B stands for bisexuality. The term bisexual is unfortunately often misused by people who aren't within the bisexual spectrum. Bisexuality is attraction to more than one gender and does not need to be just two genders. It can mean an interest in people of all genders, though each individual will have a different orientation within the spectrum. This definition is also used as the definition for pansexuality, which I'll explain later. The T means transgender. Trans people do not identify with the gender they have been assigned at birth and have transitioned or are transitioning to a different gender that fits them better, thus the term trans. It does not have to mean male to female or vice versa, it can also include non-binary people, which I'll explain next. The Q can have multiple meanings, but I'll go with the two most common, genderqueer and questioning. Genderqueer is a term that describes people who don't identify with just male or female. It could be both, neither, a gender in between, or an entirely different gender identity outside of the binary. Non-binary is another way to describe this, and from what I've seen, non-binary is the more common term. There are many different gender identities within the genderqueer and non-binary umbrella, such as agender, demigender, bigender, gender fluid, and many others. The other meaning of Q is questioning, an all-encompassing term for LGBTQ+ people who are still questioning their identity. There is no set time for how long it takes to realize who exactly you are. It can be days, decades, or anywhere in between. And no, Q does not stand for QAnon, just putting it out there. Now, the plus in LGBTQ+. This symbol is an addition to the acronym, representing identities and orientations that aren't defined within the acronym's others. A notable example of this is pansexuality, which is attracted to people with gender not being a factor at all. As stated before, this is often confused with bisexuality, though bi and pan are two different though similar orientations. From what I have seen, the label people choose to use comes down to the personal preference, and both these terms, as well as related terms, are all 100% valid in my eyes. Another notable example is asexuality, or not having any sexual attraction. However, asexuality, like bisexuality, is a spectrum that includes terms such as demisexual, which describes someone who is only attracted to people that they are already close with. Of course, there are far more identities than just the ones I mentioned, and covering all of them would take hours. I may cover more of these in another video, though it will likely be on a second channel unless you need the correct information on this video. I sincerely apologize if any of these labels or definitions are incorrect or misused, and I'd highly appreciate it if you're able to inform me and others in the comment section. Conclusion and closing thoughts. Even within the United States, there is still much progress that must be made in terms of LGBTQ+ rights, and rights of other minority groups as well, especially Black Americans. It's a disgrace that such inequality and hatred are still present within today's society, both at home and globally. There are still many countries in which being LGBTQ is straight up illegal and can be punished by brutal execution methods, which is truly detestable. I will always ensure that my community is a safe place for LGBTQ+ people to interact with each other without fear of being targeted and harassed. No person should feel unsafe in their country, town, home, especially their own skin. I believe people aren't accepting only due to misinformation or plain ignorance rather than any predetermined hate towards the LGBTQ+ community. After all, I was still somewhat confused about everything in regards to LGBTQ+ people myself back in middle school, and ended up being against them to that the confusion, lack of knowledge, and beliefs that my parents passed down onto me when I was young. And, well, look where I am now, making this video. Those of you who have LGBTQ+ friends, cousins, children, etc., or even suspect that you do, know that by using the correct pronouns, the identity they go by, and overall helping them feel safe in your household is suicide prevention. It costs nothing to be a kind person, but it can cost a life not to be kind. There are many resources and people out there if you are LGBTQ+ and currently facing hardship. The Trevor Project, Lambda Legal, etc. I will link some in the description, as well as promote suggestions for these resources in the comments. Always remember that you are valid, no matter who you are. No matter what others may think of you, no matter what doubts you have about yourself, you are valid. It's okay to be who you are, to love who you love, and never forget that. Thank you for watching this video. This is the first video I made in a long time, so I hope you like it. As always, feel free to leave a like if you like this video, and subscribe if you wish to see more content. I'd also like to ask people who are LGBTQ+ to share their stories in the comments if they are comfortable doing so. Creating an accepting community of people that are accepted by each other and feel validated and welcome is my ultimate goal. See you soon!